Dispatchers help callers on the worst days of their lives. For over 25 years, we've been there. A silent partner in millions of calls thanks to our redundant and diverse networks that ensure call delivery. Today, cities are bigger, traffic more congested, and the challenge is more complex. But you're never alone, because InDigital is quietly improving, implementing, and driving the next generation of 911, so you're supported in every situation. Make the switch at indigital.net.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
But I know the next difficult thing that we had to figure out is because of the amount of people that were at the hospital, we couldn't have her funeral at a funeral home.
Right, there's definitely a preview. Right.
So luckily our church is pretty large, and the people at the church really decorated the church really nice. But I remember getting there, and I think we were starting the wake at like 6 o'clock. I think we got there an hour early. And I just remember walking in, and I couldn't even see the end of the line. And we stood there for about 6 hours. And there were so many people that showed up. There were people that flew in. There were people that drove, 5, 6, 7 hours. Fire crews from all over the county were checking out a service one at a time to come over and visit us. And it didn't surprise me at all, but I just really enjoyed seeing, all the family.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader next-gen core services, and we are recording live actually from the speaker room here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and we are here for the 2025 Be the Difference Conference. It's put on by the Denise Hamberly Foundation, as well as the Healthy Dispatcher, and we have a special episode today, something that my guests and I have been talking about for a little while now. Well, one of the 3 that I'm sitting with, we've been talking about it. But my guests today are Ryan Chambers. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. And then his lovely parents, Ronnie and Carla. How are you doing?
We're doing great.
Great.
All right. Excellent. How have you been enjoying the conference so far?
Oh, the conference has been awesome.
It has.
We actually brought our dog who was in training for emotional support, and she has done really well. So.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. Yes. There's actually been a few dogs running around and stuff. And yesterday during the closing of day 1, I was standing by you up front, and Chase just looks over at me and smashes himself down on my foot. And he just kind of looks up at me, and I was like, enjoy.
He loves it.
Enjoy my foot there.
He will use anybody's foot as a pillow at any time.
It was amazing. I took a picture, and I meant to send it to my daughters because they love dogs. So I'm going to have to send that to them. But
awesome.
I'm excited to be here with the 3 of you because what we're going to be talking about today really is the impact on family as it pertains to first responders. and the way different things go. We've got a specific story that we're going to be sharing as well. But what I want to jump right into, because your brother Tyler is a first responder as well.
Yeah.
So for mom and dad, when did you start seeing the both of them have kind of an interest in public safety? I mean, was it even more so like TV shows, or when the fire department would run by, they're like looking like that looks cool, like you can see the gleam in the eyes already? What were some of the early signs of the possibilities of your kids going into public safety?
Well, I think it started when they were in probably middle school. They had an uncle who was a captain on the Greensboro Fire Department. And anytime we were out, they always said, let's go by the fire station and see if Uncle Jimmy's working. Well, a lot of times he was, so we were there, but usually it was on Sundays or something, and they can rest more on Sunday, so we'd always have to go to his room and get him up, to see him, because he would be in his room sleeping or whatever if they weren't on call. But I think that's really when it started, and it just kind of progressed from there. They got more into it. As they got older, they did volunteers at Gibsonville and Whitsett fire departments, and both of them at one time or another lived at the fire station when they got older.
What?
Yeah, had a resident program.
Had a
so-
resident
Oh,
program
wow.
that they would actually live at the fire department and run calls, and they would still work,
Mhm.
but that lasted maybe for each of them, maybe about a year and a half. But
Yeah.
it was it wore them out
Mhm.
because they were always the ones to be the first responders, being on site and everything. So
Now, one of the earlier stories, like right before we started recording, you had mentioned that Tyler ended up getting, it was a present of some sort. He ended up getting like a medical dictionary.
yes, that is correct. When he
One
was
more sign, just
I
one more
know,
sign.
yeah, it is. His grandmother was an OR nurse,
Mhm.
and she had asked him, what do you want for Christmas? And out of the blue, he said, I want a medical dictionary. So she bought him this medical dictionary, and we'd see him go through it and look, and I guess he was studying to see what things were. But yeah, that was probably his first, and we thought, maybe he's going to be a doctor. But,
Mhm.
he ended up being a first responder as a fireman, which he loves.
We would go visit my brother-in-law at the fire station, and they would get a call.
Yeah.
So we'll just hang out for a little bit, see how long you're going to be, and we'd look around. Tyler would be gone. So where's he at? They had a ride-along program.
Oh.
Yeah.
And he would be on
He's
the
not
truck.
gone. He's gone.
He would be on the truck riding with them.
Yeah.
But he would go a lot of times, and I think Ryan did too, spend the night and the day and the night and ride all the calls they went on.
So what was that like for you then early on, seeing that there are, I guess they have this interest in public safety, whichever it ended up or may have ended up being, whether it's police, fire, EMS, dispatch, whichever, some of those early feelings for the both of you, like, do you remember some of that? You seeing them take this interest and then thinking, what is that going to be like for them or even for us, because
Right.
as parents, of course, you're worried about your children in certain aspects in life, decisions they make, whichever, especially as they're getting older. And I tell my kids as well, I'm like, you're always going to be my babies.
That's
I'm
right.
always going to be concerned or worried about your whichever. So, but early on, as you're seeing this interest, do you remember some of those early feelings or even conversations that the two of you had?
I do. I think there was a movie called Backdraft. Was that the name of it?
Yeah.
Yes, with Kurt
Yeah.
Russell.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was very popular when they were that age to think about what they wanted to do. And I remember watching it thinking, I don't want my kids in that. And there's just no way.
Mhm.
But, a fireman is one that loves his job. I mean, they have to love it. And so as a mom, I was thinking, well, I really don't want you in those fires. But they were so headset that they were definitely going to do this. And so I had to turn it around to say, well, we'll support you whatever you do, but we're really proud of you, but we always want you to be safe. But, somebody could be walking across the street and get hit by a car. and you just can't live in a bubble.
Right.
So I think that we kind of started changing our ways about and supporting, and even encouraging if that's what you want to do,
And to see like I get going back to my brother-in-law, to see him, make a full career of 38 years, and he loved every minute of it. He loved it. He loved his job, and we always told him, if you find something you like, if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly. Yes.
So they both. Ryan evolved into it. Tyler, from 10 years old?
Yeah, at least.
Kids always say they want to be a fireman or a policeman.
Yeah.
Tyler always said he wanted to be a fireman. It never varied. He never changed, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a dentist, I want to be, a policeman. It was always, I want to be a firefighter. And it was, you very seldom see that in kids, because they'll see something on television and they'll want to do this or they'll want to do that. He was focused. He knew what he wanted to do. And I'll never forget when he got the call that he had been accepted. We got invited by my brother-in-law to an award ceremony for the Greensboro Fire Department. And we're sitting there around the table, and everything's getting ready to start. And I think my brother-in-law's station was getting some awards because they got to bring family in. And the training chief, Chief Nix, walked up behind Tyler and grabbed him by the nape of the neck and said, "What are you doing for the next 16 weeks?" Because Tyler had already had EMT. And Tyler was like, "Well, I hope I'm hanging out with you."
That's awesome.
And sure enough, that's when it started.
Wow.
Well, there was to add to that, Tyler committed right away because Tyler wasn't interested in going to college. I mean, he knew he didn't need that to be in the fire department. I chased my baseball dream first, and that was, I committed all my extra time to that, and Tyler committed all his extra time. He could have played college baseball easily too, but he committed his extra time to being at the fire department as a junior fireman, and so he started, before I did. And then when baseball career ended, that's when, I kind of picked up the public safety side. So.
And Ryan actually did get accepted to go through the training at the Greensboro Fire Department, but he had also applied to Greensboro Metro 911, and we say this jokingly. Tyler doesn't care if his hands are dirty. Ryan likes to have his hands clean. So
yeah, true.
It's true, isn't it? Yes. I'm not telling anything that's not true. So Ryan chose to go to Greensboro Metro. And Melanie Neal Jones was an excellent influence with him. And you were there, 5 years?
I was there 5 years, yeah. And then,
5 years.
Then went on to UNC.
Yeah.
And that's when I really started getting into training and become a CTO. And, about the same time I had met Nathan, for the first time. And when I met him at a Navigator conference, that was 2012. And
that far back.
I crossed paths with 2012. It was him and his dad and the board president. They were at the Navigator conference in Orlando at one of the Disney Springs hotels. And I remember walking up to the booth, and I had seen the Dateline, and I was like, man, it'd be cool to meet his family. And I was talking to Mark, Nathan's dad, and he's like, well, that's Nathan right there. And I offered to help him, and we've been best friends since. So that was where
the rest is history,
a whole nother twist of
Yeah.
my public safety path. I love dispatching.
Yeah.
And it was nice knowing all the field responders, especially in the fire service. Fire dispatch is my favorite. I liked hearing guys tell me, I love when you're on the radio. And there's certain captains and battalion chiefs that I'd liked having working because I knew my job was going to be easy. But so I kind of transitioned into, teaching with Nathan and eventually, working full time with the foundation. And that's really where my kind of the national network started to build out.
Yeah, we kind of have an inside joke because we're not sure if brother ever dispatched a brother from Metro 911, but I remember the first call that Ryan took that he had to dispatch Tyler. It was in the middle of the night.
It was about 3 a.m.
Yeah, and before Ryan had dispatched the call, he called Tyler on the phone. And when Tyler answered the phone, he goes, wakey, wakey. And by that time, the alarms go off. So
he had just got promoted to driver. And
Oh.
we used to joke about, he's like, you got to give me a head start. And so I did. I gave him about a 5-second head start before I set off the house set. So
That is amazing. I do have a question, and I want to ask this mostly because this happened with my dad and his brother, but because there was the influence, because the both of you don't have a public safety background, but your uncle does. Did your uncle ever say, "Oh, well, boys took after me," or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't think he's really said
they
that
followed
way,
my
but
path?
He's very close with them.
yeah, we're still very close with him, and if anybody ever goes to my Facebook, every time I travel or every time, if we post a picture, like he's always commenting, proud of you, and he always throws every fire emoji that Facebook allows on there. So he definitely follows our progress, and he loves hearing, what we've done. So, I've accomplished a lot on the 911 side. Tyler's accomplished a lot on the fire side. I mean, he was Fireman of the Year for the city of Greensboro one year.
That's awesome.
He, drives the busiest ladder truck in the city. So
We actually even have a family member that goes back way before that. Carla's uncle, great uncle,
yeah,
was the chief in the Greensboro Fire Department.
yeah. So
What?
Yeah.
He's got some lineage there.
Yeah, so
that's pretty awesome.
But Uncle Jimmy, he follows our path closely. He calls us all the time, and he's a supporter of Nathan and the foundation. He's always asking about the family. So a lot of pride that he has.
I ask because my dad's oldest brother, oldest living brother, he was he's a former FBI agent, and he's a professor for criminal justice in Texas, down in the Valley, like McAllen area and all of that. And every so often, my dad will say, "Yeah, so I was talking to your uncle," and he's like, "So, see Richie's, still following in my footsteps." And I was like, "Oh, he just likes to kind of lightly jab that in, huh?"
Yeah.
But my dad also was. He was a gang coordinator, and he's worked with troubled youth, and he's done a lot of stuff. I'll put it this way: we lived in a small town growing up. I could not get away with anything.
Oh yeah,
There was no way. Plus, I was the only teenager driving a 1983 Z28 jet black Camaro with T-tops. So that as well. Yeah. I could not get away with anything.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's how all of that went.
Not long ago, didn't mean to interrupt you, but not long ago, Jimmy, my brother-in-law, went to the station to see Tyler, and they got a call. Well, of course, the captain told Jimmy, "Jump on, let's go."
So he got to do the ride along.
And Tyler's driving.
With Tyler driving.
Yeah.
It was a little emotional for him because it was his. Jimmy was actually at that station for many years. So he got he got to ride.
That makes it even more special.
Yeah, with Tyler on a call, with Tyler driving this time and him sitting in the back.
Oh, it's like a passing of the torch.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably about 20 years apart from Tyler doing his first ride along to Uncle Jimmy getting to ride the back of the truck with Tyler driving. So
and it was really neat because Jimmy recorded the whole thing and sent it to us. And,
that is cool. That's
Tyler
cool.
loves that
May or may
horn.
not been some tears involved.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're ever in the city of Greensboro and you see a really long ladder truck, you best move out of its way. 'Cause
I will remember that.
Yeah.
I almost went there just to ride around, and I was told, "Be careful where you go." Basically, is what it was. Just be careful where you go. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stay in Raleigh. I'm just going to stay.
Yes, there's a reason that the fire department and the law enforcement are so busy. So,
I took those words in stride, and I made sure to just chill.
100%.
Yeah, I stayed that weekend. Now, one of the things that we were talking about as well before we started recording, Ronnie, was that you dig listening to the scanner every now and then.
Yeah, if I hear that there's a fire going on in Greensboro, or Gibsonville or McLeansville, or right, you're volunteer at both.
Yeah.
Right. So if I hear there's a fire going on, I'll fire up the scanner on my iPad, and I'll sit there and listen to it, and it's addicting. You can't get away from it. and I've been able to hear both of them on the radio.
Yeah.
And it's nerve-wracking.
I was just going to ask, what is that even like? Because as you're saying it, my heart is pounding, trying to think of my own kids.
Not listen.
Yeah, she doesn't. She doesn't want to listen to it, but it's nerve-wracking, knowing what they're in, doing, knowing what they can get into, and just you can't get away from it. You have to stay to the end, and sometimes it's a pretty good while. I'm listening to the scanners, but I want to hear what they do. I've seen what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure they're safe.
Yeah, I want to know that they're safe. And there's been some calls that's been a little scary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Major fire downtown Greensboro. Me and Ryan was on the phone. Tyler was at the fire, along with a friend of ours that's a church member, and
Large mayday.
it was large mayday. 3 firefighters, 4.
Is it four?
I think it was 4.
4 trapped, and
One
a
was
chief went
critically
in after.
hurt. Yeah.
One of the chiefs, white shirt, went in after to try to get them out, and he got trapped too.
Mhm.
But Ryan called me, and I was right down the road, and you couldn't drive there, so I just ran down the road, and we found out in the meantime that a friend of ours, Shane Boswell, which was a captain, recently retired, he was one of the ones that was trapped.
Mhm.
We found out that Tyler was actually in the bucket truck with his captain.
Yeah.
So it was a nerve-wracking day. There was an explosion. It was a scary time because we didn't know where he was for a while. And Ryan was calling everybody and their brother trying to find out.
Well, I had heard what was happening, and so it was a chop shop. The caller called in and said there was a vehicle fire, and language barrier didn't tell the 911 call taker that the vehicle was actually in the warehouse. And so when they got there, multiple vehicles were on fire. Well, it was a large open warehouse, and about the time they made entry, the roof came down on top of them. And so I was able to log in into our CAD on our mobile device and see that Tyler was on the way, but Tyler was it was in his first due territory, but they had actually been dispatched to another structure fire seconds before. And so his truck was going the opposite way, and so they were out of position. So he actually would have been probably the first or second crew there, but they turned him around and sent him back to that large warehouse fire. And as him and his captain went in to put their fire up in the bucket, he's throwing the ladder. The rest of his crew was part of the extrication, the RIT team that went in and pulled out, the first crew. But I could see that, all right, he was 4th there, so I could calculate, know an incident command, all right, he's most likely good. But I know Dad listens all the time, so when these big events happen, I know about it pretty much immediately. And so sometimes I'll call him. We've had a few fire trucks hit on the highway, going through Gibsonville, and I'll tell him everybody's good because I know he's most likely listening, or especially with the radio reference scanner app. When the listeners spike, you get a notification. Well, he's going to click on it, and so a lot of times I kind of pre-scan it before I call him.
So it's as a dad, it's a proud moment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it's also a nerve-wracking. But it's something that I just have to do.
Right.
I want to, like I said, I want to make sure he's safe. I know he's doing his job. I know his crew. I know his captain. I know they're going to do everything possible to keep them safe. But still, it's the unknown that first responders of every type get involved in, and it's just it's the excitement, the nerve-wracking, the dad, everything is just. Can't let go. You got to listen.
It definitely has to be a hard thing because I know how it is in dispatch. Like when there's an incident that happens, whether it's hope it doesn't happen or anything, but like a shot's fired or someone is in an accident, and you're trying to figure out if there's a bunch of people there already, who is the one. We know everyone's voices, so we're just listening to the voices that are coming over the radio so that we can narrow down who exactly it is that's hurt, who the person is. So that's how we do it, is listening to those voices, and you know your children's voices.
Yeah.
So I can just imagine as you're going through, you're like, that's not Tyler, that's not Ryan. You know, you're just going and going and going, and then you hear the voice finally, and I can only imagine that it's just
It is.
like a
Mhm.
sigh of relief. And I'm getting goosebumps
Yeah.
just thinking about it, because being in dispatch myself, I never had those moments where I was working with family. Like, they're my second family, right? You go through some of the same ones, but this is your like blood, right? And I've worked with dispatchers whose husbands are out there or wives are out there, and I would ask them, like, how do you do this? Where at my dispatch center, if we had something happen where, you know, someone is chasing someone, or whether it be on foot or in a car or whichever, standoff, they would say this, and we would hit our button, a tone. It would just go do 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 do, and we would right after immediately say, "Central's under code 7 until so and so advises. Everyone else go to the other channel,
Yeah.
and we're keeping this traffic here." So I would say to them, "How do you now live through that, knowing that your spouse is out there and we're just listening?" And a lot of times, what they would say, and maybe it's the same with the three of you as well, they would say, "I trust that my spouse has the training and knows what they're doing. And also they have their brothers and sisters out there to, you know, assist them." And I'm like, well, good on you. Because
Yeah.
I feel like, because not living it myself, like, I'd be freaking out with them. So I can't imagine, you know, for the both of you, especially you, to be listening.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, it spikes up. You're
Yeah.
like, I know Dad is listening to
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah, there's been times that I've called in on the quick access radio or the quick access phone directly to Fire Console and be like, all right, give me the rundown. Give me the 10-second spiel. What's going on?
yeah.
You know, it's nice having those connections on both sides, because, you know, even though I'm not, you know, just doing the volunteering part-time in fire, you know, I know all the dispatchers in the room, and I've had some call me after being on an event and, you know, check on us. And so it's, you know, not just blood family, but,
Yeah.
you know, you get to know these people so well.
Right.
And,
Of course.
you know, some of Tyler's former employees and captains and things like that, even though I don't work at Guilford Metro anymore, they'll sometimes call me and ask me dispatch questions. I'm like, I didn't know who else to call, but, you know, I knew I could, you know, ask you. And,
Right. Yeah. Of course. The resource.
yeah, it's definitely a different perspective. I always knew where his truck was if I was working.
So here's a question for you then. Going into dispatch, but also now, you know, also volunteering at different fire departments and such. But in the beginning, early on, when you started going through all of this, were there moments where you talked to your parents? Like, you know, maybe it was a hard call, or maybe maybe you saw him coming home or whichever, or you talked to him on the phone. You're like, you don't sound right. Because of course a parent knows. Like, you can't hide it.
Yeah.
So you know, like, something is wrong. You know, what were some of those conversations like? Because sometimes for us specifically, you and I, Ryan, being in public safety, we don't want to give everything, because it's like, you're already potentially going to have a nightmare for whatever it is that you heard. You don't want to put that on them, but at the same time, you're trying to like get it out in a way. What were some of those conversations like?
I think really, so most of those conversations that were driven by the local news.
Oh, really?
You know, because
so they had kind of a preview.
Yeah, so we really try. You know, we're all guilty of it. We try to leave it at work, but you know, we don't want to burden others with, you know, a horrible story. But I know I work night shift, you know, in dispatch, and there'd be times, and I know, like, if Dad was going to work, he'd be like, "Oh, are y'all busy?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, normal night." But I think we only really talked about specific incidents. If, you know, I heard there was a big accident, yeah, it was bad. You know, so to kind of give enough to like satisfy an answer without, you know, yeah, the person was, you know, impaled in 7 places by a tractor truck. Like, you know,
sorry, Mom and Dad, but this is what happened.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. I think we do that for not only family, but regular civilians who don't.
True, yeah.
You know, it's hard to explain hearing someone scream on the, you know, on the radio or on the phone or something like that. So I think most of that conversation only was brought up, like, if y'all ask about something you saw on the news. So.
And there's not many days that they probably get tired of me doing it, but I talk to them at least a couple times a day. You know, just to see, you know, how busy they are, where they, what they've been doing. It's just something that I just, even if it's by text. But if I don't hear from them, then I know, something's going on. They're busy, and when they get time, they'll give me a ring. But it's just the closeness of family. We always talk multiple times a day.
See, that's always a good thing to have that strong support system there, especially when you're going through different things, and then everyone is trying to understand, but then like for the two of you, trying to figure out, well, how do we be there for them? We might not understand completely, but what are some of the things that we can do to make it better? Do we just sit and listen? Do we give a hug? You make a meal? Like, there's a bunch of different things.
A lot of those conversations would spark up, like, thinking back, y'all probably heard more stories at holidays when Uncle Jimmy was around, when he would, because that's when it would be me, Tyler, and Uncle Jimmy, and we'd be sitting there and we'd be telling stories.
Comparing
that makes sense.
And so that's probably how a lot of it came up. Because organically, we didn't really talk a lot about day-to-day incidents, like I said, unless it was a major, if it wasn't newsworthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
now there was one event that, with Ryan having connection, Ronnie and I lived about a mile and a half from my mom. And there was a really bad thunderstorm coming through. And I remember Ronnie and I were home, and we heard the boom.
I was standing out on the front porch. I'm one of those crazy ones that like
he likes to stand anyway.
Stand outside on the porch in a thunderstorm and just listen to the storm.
Ronnie comes back in the front door, and I'm cooking, and I'm turning everything off. And I said, we have to go check Mom's house. And about that time, Mr. Detective called over here to say, I think Grandmother's house has been hit.
It was, 3/4 of a mile?
Wow.
The ground shook at our house.
It hit.
Well, everybody, all of my public safety friends knew it was her house because before she passed away, she had dementia. And, there was some times that they had to bring her back home, or they would swing by and check on her. And she stayed up late at night, and, they knew that was her. And so they knew if they ever had an incident there. And so as soon as the address come out, people were calling.
Well, it wasn't an exact address. It was
an intersection.
Because.
And then when they told me which house it was, that's when I called them. I was like, yeah, that's hers. So luckily she had already passed, or
no,
she hadn't passed away, but she was in a facility, so she never knew her house.
So there was nobody home or anything.
No. But
when we got
either way,
it was like a dirt road, and she was maybe 1/8 of a mile off from the main road. And when we got there, even right after the boom, somebody had actually seen it hit the house and called 911.
Just
they
a
were
passerby.
We still to this day do not have any idea who that was. But
wow.
Because we didn't know them. They told us who it was, but we didn't know the name. And by the time we got there were so many fire trucks that we could hardly get down the road. And of course, Ryan's en route, and Tyler, I remember getting to the house, and I'm trying to tell them there's nobody here, as they're busting down the back door, which I had no problem with, do it. What if somebody had been in there? And I remember looking, and I seeing Tyler run down the gravel road, and he's got his Greensboro fire gear on his arm, just, running as fast as he can, because, he helped actually fight the fire. But, things like that it makes you proud, that both of them were there, and both of them were, able to help. But it was a very sad day.
Mm-hmm.
The house did not burn down completely. Believe it or not, saved the house. It burnt the bonus room over top of the house. And when it was over, they got the fire out. We lifted the garage doors and backed the cars out, and they washed them off. And so it was amazing.
That was it?
That was
and
it.
that fire was so intense, we could see it as soon as we pulled out of our driveway.
The flames were unbelievable.
And when we pulled in, we actually watched them go in the back door, or the side door. There was a big window in the front of that bonus room. Mm-hmm. And all you could see was fire going, just swirling around. And then you see like 5 bodies, and then you don't see anything because they had that fire out in seconds. Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. It was so fast.
It's different when, you get to you go back to family and all the firemen there, if they didn't know it when they got there, they knew it very quickly that it was our family. You know, and so you kick into another gear, and you know that fire, most fires, it was just burning the attic and the roof, and so it's actually a very easy fire to put out because you walk in, you spray water up, it goes out, but the flames are very intense on the outside because it's vented. So it was an easy fire to knock down, but when it is a fireman's family, it's a different level of intensity. There's extra people that are coming because they hear, you know, whose house, because we grew up in a fairly tight community, and you know, a lot of our high school buddies and stuff like that, we still are in the fire service with. So it's definitely a tight group.
Oh man, I just you keep saying the bonus from it in my head. I keep thinking that was literally a bonus.
It was.
I just took that out, and that was it. It's like,
she had a Cadillac, and she had a 1974 Super Beetle in the garage.
Nice.
And she loved that Volkswagen Bug. And when they raised the door, the fire was out. They raised the door, moved the hoses, pushed the cars out, literally rinsed them off.
That was it.
That was it. They looked like they would.
Oh, thank the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
There was definitely a lot of people. A lot of people there.
A lot of firemen.
It's interesting. I mean, you said it perfectly. You know, it definitely takes it to another level, and it's not just in public safety. You know, it's in the medical profession as well. You know, one of their own. It's in any profession, any group, whichever, however you want to put it. When it's one of your own, you know, that basic concept, that foundation, it goes to the next level, whatever it might be. And you're right. It's the only thing I have to, you know, to compare really is just like, you know, when my grandmother passed away, you know, I took that phone call. And when I was headed to my my aunt's house to be with my family, the deputies ended up going out there. They didn't need to go out there, but they went out there because it was my family, and they wanted to call me to let me know, like, hey man, we're here with them, and they're doing the best that they can given the situation. And then they told me this, and the thing that was great about this is, and Ryan can probably attest to this as well, there's a lot of times in public safety, especially when you're taking 911 calls, it's like you take a hard call after hard call after hard call, and either the dispatch guys or dispatch universe, however you want to put it, they like, we're going to throw you one that's outrageous to kind of break up the craziness that you've been going through. And I needed that. I needed something on my way there. It was just my brother and I, and we're just devastated because, you know, our grandmother passed away. And the officers call, they tell me that, and the officer goes, I just want you to know this. There's no one on the west side of the county. So don't be stupid. Just get here as fast as possible. And I started laughing with him, and I said, thank you, man. I said, I appreciate that. And I hang up, and my brother goes, why were you laughing just now? Because he's in his head is like, we're going because our grandmother just passed away. And I told him this, and he's just staring at me. And I said, do I need to whiteboard this? Like, you don't understand? It's just completely over. Yeah, I said, they just gave us the green light to speed, dude. And he goes, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. I was like, I know, right?
Well, insider information.
So it's little things like that that happen. And so I want to segue as we're on the topic of family. And what I would like to do, if you could, Ryan, because the last time we talked about this, I'm pretty sure it was literally about 400 episodes ago.
It probably was.
In Illinois, because I just put out, as of this recording, I just put out episode 588.
Yes.
So that was a long time ago. So if you could just kind of take the listeners through just a short kind of recap, what you were going through, and then I want to get your parents' take on it as well as we talk about this impact of family and everyone who showed up, everyone who came around, and what it was like for the two of you, Ronnie and Carla. But Ryan, if you can just kind of give an overview of what happened with you and your late wife, Kayla.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, literally 7 years ago this week, it was a Sunday afternoon, and actually the weather was a lot like it is outside now. It was cold and damp and rainy, and Kayla, she woke up, and she had end-stage renal failure, so kidney disease. And she had been on dialysis for about 1.5 years, and a couple near attempts at a transplant, but her body was really starting to get frail, and so you knew it was going to be difficult for her to be able to accept a kidney. But when she had good days, you took advantage of good days. And I remember waking up that morning. She wanted to go to church because it was a Sunday. So we went to church, and she was full of energy, which was rare. Maybe one day every couple of weeks she would have the energy that she had that day. And then after church, she wanted to go to Cracker Barrel. It was one of her favorite places to go eat lunch. And so we went to Cracker Barrel with Mom and Dad. And again, she ate, I remember very vividly that she ate her whole plate.
Yep. And even told us.
Yep.
I cleaned my plate.
And that was sometimes difficult for her, because she would always be so nauseous from the dialysis and, the binders and all the 2 handfuls of medication she had to take every day. So she again was feeling great. Sitting at lunch, Dad somehow had a newspaper, and I remember looking at the Academy Sports sales ad, and there was a pink handgun in there that she wanted to look at.
She had asked me to teach her how to shoot.
Yes. Knowing good and well that she was probably too weak, but she wanted to go over there. And Kayla was very intentional with time and conversation. And when she asked Dad to go look at it, of course, Dad wasn't going to tell her no. And so we drive just a minute or two over to Academy Sports, and we were probably in there for an hour or so. And I remember me and Mom were looking. She also she wanted a new rain jacket, so I was going to get her a rain jacket. So I think me and Mom went to go get a rain jacket. Dad and Kayla disappeared to the gun section. And as we're leaving, Academy, she wanted to go watch a movie, and I don't to this day remember what movie it was. It was some chick flick, and again, when she's having a good day, you take advantage of it. And so we went over to the movies. She got a red icy and a big old thing of popcorn after she had just cleaned her plate at lunch, and we sat down in the movie theater, and the credits started, and a few minutes later she looked at me and she said, "I've pushed it too far. We need to go home." And as we're leaving the movie theater, I asked her to call 911, and she's like, "No, just get me back to the fire department. I'll have them check me out." Because my guys, she knew what, she didn't like having to tell everybody all of her problems. It's like you call EMS, you got to give them your medication list, all your signs and symptoms, and she hated doing that. So she wanted to be in a place where she didn't have to explain all that. So I let her talk me out of dialing 911, and then we started heading across the parking lot, large shopping center, actually where you joined me for lunch not long ago. I was able to show you exactly where she collapsed. But she stopped me in the car and told me, she's like, "I think you should call 911. I really don't feel good." And then when she got up, I got parked it and come around the other side, and she stood up and she went in full cardiac arrest right in front of me. So I was able to dial 911, and I remember, and I get emotional talking about 911. I could probably talk about calling them more, but I knew the 911 dispatcher. And the only thing I could remember him saying was my name, and I could say his name. And it felt like I did CPR for an hour, but they literally had people there in 2.5 minutes. I couldn't tell him where I was at. I couldn't, all I could say was Kayla was down, and thank God that James knew Kayla's condition. So I didn't have to explain any of that. And then, when the medics got there, the only thing that I remember the medics saying is, "I got a pulse, we got to go." And then I started making phone calls. I just remember calling Mom and Dad. And I think I remember, like, "Did y'all make it home yet? You got to get down to Metz Regional. Kayla's collapsed." I don't even remember exactly what I said.
I do.
And then I called Kayla's sister and somehow told him, I was like, "You got to get to Moses Cone, or Alamance Regional." And we took off to the hospital, and Kayla had a pulse, but she was immediately put on a ventilator to try to stabilize her. And then that's when I don't even know who called who and how word spread so fast, but in no time the hospital was slam packed. So my brother-in-law was also a fireman as well. Kayla's sister's husband, yeah. So he, he's coming to the hospital, and all of his friends are making phone calls. I was supposed to leave the next day to fly to Texas and teach with Nathan. And as people started showing up, I remember thinking about, like, I've got to let Nathan know that I'm not going to be able to come, because of course we don't think that, first thing in our mind is there's a chance we can save her. I did CPR. I was able to get her back. And I just remember every time that I'd walk out of her room and back into the waiting room, there was 20 more people there. There were 20 more people there. And Alamance Regional is a small regional hospital. And so I knew, based on connections, I had to get her to a intensive care facility. Typically that process, again, takes a little bit of convincing, but through connections, I was able to make that happen in a very short time. And so we got her transferred to Moses Cone, and not only did they transfer her, but the whole crowd followed. So she was in ICU for 4 days, and we never left the hospital. We were never alone at the hospital, and it took me years to really remember and really sit back and think about all the people that showed up. There's 2 people I talked to at the hospital. I just got a new fire chief. I don't even know if Mom and Dad knew this, but he had started about a month before. And so I was surprised to see him get to the hospital so quick. And he started to tell me that he knew what I was going through. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. And he told me, he's like, well, I'm widowed and lost my wife 2 years ago to cancer. And so I immediately gravitate to that, because I was like, all right, when you tell me that you know what I'm going through, now you actually have proven that you really do. And it took about a day or day and a half, but Nathan was the next person that I needed by my side, because I knew that he was another one that said, I know what you're going through. So I had those few people that I kind of leaned on, and they knew the family, but I was posting on social media as we were going through, 3 a.m. was when I was, I would do my updates, and people were sleeping. I didn't sleep much, and messages start flying in from all over the world. And I think the Facebook posts ended up getting close to 2 million views. We're getting patches and letters and messages from dispatchers, and it started spreading around locally as well. And so there's people showing up that I had never met. There was one Greensboro officer that he literally would come over there every single day, and he would just show up with donuts, and he would just stand in the corner. He wouldn't say anything. And I remember going over and thanking him for support, and he introduced himself, and he's like, you don't know me, but I know who you are. He's like, you were my dispatcher. And he said, I heard the story, so I had to come and just return the favor. And I still talk to him and his wife. And there were so many people that the doctors thought it would be smart to call the cops on us, because we had overpopulated their waiting room, and we started having food. And there was another family there that ironically was going through a very similar thing, another young couple, and we just kind of all blended together and supported each other. Well, the doctor come and told us that we weren't allowed to stay there no more, and literally tried to tell me that I had to go home. And I'm sure I gave him some polite words. And it didn't take long for the cops to realize that the group that he was asking to leave the hospital, half of them were also law enforcement and firemen. So that was resolved pretty quickly. And I felt like every day more and more people just showed up. Dispatchers were rotating, taking their lunch break to come sit with me. The North Carolina APCO and NENA chapters went to my house and cleaned the house. They stocked groceries. They were preparing for what they knew eventually was probably the most likely outcome. What one vivid memory I have, I was sitting beside my brother-in-law, and it was late afternoon, but a crowd of people come off the elevator, and a guy come up to me, and he said, I've been following your story, and I come to offer you whatever I can provide. You have full access to it. And he introduced himself as the city manager of the city of Greensboro. And my brother-in-law looked at me and he's like, "What the hell do you do? Who are you?" It's like, "Why are there so many people here?" And he was like, "What? You and Nathan really just talk about the 911 dispatchers?" He's like, "Why? Like, this isn't normal."
Yeah.
And that's when it kind of clicked. Is like, no, it's not normal, but it's just like what we do for each other.
It's family.
And so, yeah, it was, going back to the, 4 days later, she ended up passing away. But I know the next difficult thing that we had to figure out is because of the amount of people that were at the hospital, we couldn't have her funeral at a funeral home.
Right. There's
it wasn't
definitely a
gonna work.
preview. Right.
So luckily our church is pretty large, and the people at the church really made, decorated the church really nice. But I remember getting there, and I think we were starting the wake at like 6 o'clock. I think we got there an hour early. And I just remember walking in, and I couldn't even see the end of the line. And we stood there for about 6 hours. And there were so many people that showed up. There were people that flew in. There were people that drove, 5, 6, 7 hours. Fire crews from all over the county were checking out of service one at a time to come over and visit us. And it didn't surprise me at all, but I just really enjoyed seeing, all the families sit back and just be blown away by the support. And most of the time when people come to a funeral, they just kind of walk through. They give you a hug. They tell you they'll pray for you, and they kind of walk on. Well, people came and they didn't leave for hours. They were sitting down in the church. They were talking to each other. And, the next day for the funeral, one of Kayla's wishes were to be buried beside her brother who had passed away in a car crash when she was 16. And so the cemetery was about 30, 35 miles away from the church. And the same firemen that were my groomsmen at my wedding were the pallbearers two years later. And much like when Nathan tells Denise's story, because of Denise's dad and the public safety connection, I know the whole city of Burlington and all of Alamance County thought that a first responder had passed away because fire, law enforcement, and EMS had blocked every intersection for about 35 miles all the way to the cemetery. My fire engine had checked out of service and led the procession all the way down there. But I remember Nathan driving my truck, and something that we talked about for a couple of days afterwards. And he kind of said, he's like, I remember saying, like, Kayla would have loved this. He said she would have loved this for you and the family. But I know that there's some people in my family, there's friends that still talk about it. And I'm blessed to have the network that I have, and a lot of people. We always talk about the mental traumas of work and what work does to us. But when when work hits personal life, I never in my dreams thought that I'd be, struggling to remember how to do CPR on my wife. I used to get mad at those callers. I'm like, well, if you just shut up and listen to me, I'll tell you what to do. Well, I was that caller who couldn't comprehend, left from right. And Nathan's one of the ones, and Nathan and Tanya are one of the ones that, really encouraged me to share this story, because I can say that I don't have that many mental traumas that I live with from the fire service or from 911. I've been able to get all past that. But, there's times that even if I'm at the fire station, a cardiac arrest comes out, like I do kind of flash back and like, okay, I know how to do it. Don't mess it up.
Right.
And so it's very challenging, but I've really kind of dedicated my career path now to peer support and mental health, because like I don't know what if any of us would have done without the amount of help that showed up. And I think sometimes we forget about the family impacts, and maybe family not fully expecting that level of turnout.
Right. And with that being said, kind of a segue as well to now the both of you, did you expect that type of impact, that type of response, that many people showing up, that amount of support coming
Well,
for this whole entire situation?
Kayla.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time she was on dialysis, I never heard a complaint. She would go sit in, when she couldn't do dialysis at home anymore, she'd go sit in a chair for 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever it was, 3 days a week, and never complain. And I've had eye problems, so I'm, for the most part, night blind. Come birthdays, Christmas, she would come get me and take me Christmas shopping.
Mm-hmm.
The Christmas before she passed away, she came and got me not knowing she had had dialysis that day. She never told me, she never complained, and we ran around like 2 little kids going Christmas shopping. And I told her, I said, listen, I want to take you to your favorite restaurant. Where do you want to go? So she wanted to go to the Village Grill.
Village Grill. Mm-hmm.
And we sat there and talked for probably 2 hours. And she told me that night, which I really didn't think it was that close, but she said, my body's getting weak. I'm not going to make it much longer. And it's like, no, don't say that, Kayla. But she knew it was coming, I feel like, but she wouldn't complain. But she never met a stranger. She was the kindest person you'd ever want to meet in your life. She'd do anything for you the first time she met you. That was just her. And she had an impact on so many people. And then through the 911 conventions that her and Ryan would go to, they just made so many friends and touched so many lives. And, I'll never forget. And sorry.
It's okay. Take your time.
Mm-hmm.
When the funeral was over, no, it was, we going in or coming out, I can't remember, but we walked through the doors. I think half of
It's the start of the funeral.
the start, I think half of every fire department within a 100-mile radius was standing out in the hall. In the dress blues.
Wasn't just firemen,
Had attention.
911.
Hmm.
Yeah. 911 dispatchers were there too. Police officers were there. We walked out the door, and the fire trucks were all lined up across the front of the church. It just shows. It don't take a tragedy for them to be that close. They always check on each other.
Yeah.
Ryan did a conference about when 911 needs 911, and that's you see them come out. Their family. Firefighters spend a third of their life with other firefighters, so they are family. They're not coworkers.
Well, Kayla got to know a lot of these people on a different level because, people who would see her at a national conference, I brought her to a lot of the National NENA, National APCO. If me and Nathan were teaching close by, I took Kayla with me, and a lot of people thought that she was just tagging along. But, because of my medical training, she was allowed to do peritoneal dialysis at home. And sometimes she struggled hooking herself up and changing out the dialysis solution bags. They weighed about 40 pounds apiece. And so sometimes she couldn't necessarily do that. And so I would pre-order solutions and ship her dialysis machine and take her with me. And she would work the booth with Nathan and I. And if there was a trip that I couldn't take her on, a lot of times Tanya would fly in from Oregon before her and Nathan even got married and stay with her, because I was terrified to leave her by herself. And so if her family couldn't stay with her, and mom and dad would stop by all the time, but the firemen checked on her a lot. It's if I went to training at the fire department, she would go with me. They were kind of like all of her big brothers. And so that was why she wanted to get to the fire station, the night or the afternoon that she collapsed on me, because she knew that she trusted them because they had treated her and helped her through,
Right.
a lot of stuff. So while she was not a first responder herself, she was well entrenched in the first responder community, and that's what, and Nathan and I talk about it. It literally looked like a line of duty funeral. I mean, it's hard to explain.
There's so much to this. The main portion of it being the impact of family,
Mhm.
and especially with this, as well as we go into the wrap up of this episode. For Ronnie and Carla, what I want to ask you is, for anyone who is out there listening to this right now, who, whether it be someone in public safety or maybe even a family member, what are some things that you can tell them as we're talking about the impact of public safety on family, or even that support, especially the support piece of it? What are some things that you can say to those who are listening, whether it be to watch out for signs, or just simply be there for them, or any types of that impact, the experiences that you have had? What are some things that you can tell those who are listening?
Well, I think one of the things is you need people around you when you're going through something like this. And the amount of people that came out from us, you know, it happened, like Ryan said, it was about 2 o'clock, I think, when it happened. And when we got to the hospital that day, I remember that they took us all in back to the emergency room. They didn't leave us out in the waiting area. And in a matter of minutes, we had our deacons were showing up from the church. And I didn't know till a while later that Brian had posted Kayla's collapse on his Facebook page and we need you to pray. And they were there to do anything we needed for us. And then after then the firemen started coming, and because it was spreading, more church people came. And we relied on them to help us to get things done so that we could spend our time with Kayla. And that's what we did. Until she passed away on Friday, we never wanted for food. We never needed, never wanted anything to drink because it was always there. We had, that first night, of course, none of us left. We slept on the floor and in the ER. And I remember somebody coming up the next day and saying, "You're not sleeping on the floor. We'll bring you blow-ups,
Air
air
mattresses.
mattresses." And I think that's what kind of got us in trouble with Cone Hospital. But, we had all these air mattresses so that people could rest. Even Ryan. Ryan would be able to lay down and, take a little bit. I know our pastor was actually on a mission trip too. And he was in Afghanistan or Pakistan, something country that didn't withstand. And he called us and he said, "I just want you to know that we've got people over here praying for y'all." And when the next morning, I guess it was Monday morning, was the very first time that we saw so much food. I remember Melanie Jones was there, Christina Moore. They were all from Metro 911. And they would come before they went to work. And they would bring coffee or donuts or pastries, and other people did too. And it was just a constant flow of, "What do you need? What can I do for you?" And I think we left the hospital. Well, I had gotten sick with kind of a bug, so I had to go. One night we went home and slept, but the other times we were there. And I remember talking to Nathan on a Wednesday, and I think it was Wednesday, maybe Tuesday. Some things I can't remember exactly, but I remember him saying, "Do you think I need to come?" And I said, "Yes." And he flew in from Florida, and Tanya flew in from Oregon. And I mean, it was just, the rooms was packed, but yet our hearts were breaking. But we were there being supported by people that knew Ryan or, knew Ronnie and I. And they just didn't come and say, "We're here if we need something," and walk away. They would bring something, or they would come and do something there, or, "Do you need your yard mowed, or is there anything I need to do at your house?" Or, but they just, I don't think we could have made it without them. I really don't. Because I remember when she passed away that Friday morning, Ryan went home to a house that was cleaned and stocked, and people still came after that. They didn't just stop the day that the funeral happened. I remember we had so many flowers and stuff. I went to the church one day after the service and loaded my car, and I took them to Ryan's house. And when I got there, his driveway was just full of people. And I think
For
that
weeks.
was when Vic came from the beach.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just,
I had people they would knock on the door at night and be like, "Hey, I'm staying here tonight."
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys they were just rotating. I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Tyler stayed a couple nights. My buddy Vic from 5 hours away down the coast, he drove in, stayed a couple nights, and it was a constant flow of people. Not just, like I said, not like she said, not just at the funeral, but it's, it probably about a month. Yeah, I was never by myself.
And one thing that Mama Bear, she gets kind of protective sometimes. And I know after Ryan had posted that first Facebook page, other people started posting about Kayla, and I shut it down and I said, "No, Ryan will be the one to post, because I don't want any false information out there. I don't want anybody to post and say, anything about her condition. I want Ryan to do it." So that's what he did.
during the middle of the night was he would write his post. And I know people would say, not knowing that Kayla was our family, they would say, "Did y'all hear about that young girl that passed away?" And I know, I think it was Hawaii. He got things from
all
Hawaii
over
on
the
there.
place.
And I remember that. Sorry.
You're okay. Take your time.
I remember that we had one post from somebody who said, "I was in the parking lot and I saw you helping your wife. And I've been following you on Facebook." And I thought, he don't know us from anything. And but yet he took an interest and he followed us. But I mean, that post that was shared, I couldn't tell you how many times. So we are very thankful that we had all that support during this time. And we still have that support now. I mean, the fire guys will see us, and we still get hugs, just like we see Nathan and Tanya a lot. It's just amazing that the friendships that Ronnie and I really didn't have from that time we have now. Really good contacts, really good contacts. So you need support, and they gave an overabundance of support. Really, I don't know how else to explain it.
What I'd say to the families of all first responders is be there, listen, talk. I'll never forget, Ryan was on an accident on the highway. Actually, you speak, it was Ryan and Ryan. There was another volunteer named Ryan. They was at an accident, and the fire truck got hit with somebody that never slowed down. And the other Ryan had to dive through. Luckily, the doors were open, and he had to dive through the fire truck to not get hit. And I believe it total lost the truck.
Mm-hmm.
So, but listen, talk to them. Just that little thing that you may pick up on that something's bothering them. But we've always had a really, really good, close relationship. Like I said, I probably bug them, calling them just to see how their day's going, or texting or whatever. But just listen, talk to them. In the first responder business, you never know. Tell your kids, tell your family you love them, because you never know what the situation is going to be, especially in today's world. It's crazy. But just, I'm extremely proud of what my boys do. Our daughter-in-law, Allie, she and our grandkids, she's there by herself
Every third night.
taking care of her kids. Every third night by herself. That's the career path that he had chosen when they met, and she understood it. And sometimes it gets hard on her, but luckily now we're a lot closer to both of them. I retired. We sold our house and moved, and didn't know it at the time, but the house that we bought was
Well, we were going to look at.
5 minutes from both of them, which is nice. But really, like I said, to the families, just be there for them and listen to them if they'll talk. If they won't talk, then maybe you need to, just sit with them, because some of the cases that they see, it's not easy. I'm not sure how they deal with it. And I've heard them talk. I've heard both of them talk. When it's kids, it's different. When it's adults, it's still tough, but they handle it in their own way. firemen do. And when it gets beyond that they can't handle it that way is when, you need to be there, love on them, try to get, refocus. That's one thing that, Chase, traveling with Ryan, he does a lot. Now we're getting in, taking Bailey, because she's just a big baby loving dog. Just refocusing on a dog, taking your mind off for a few minutes to pet a dog that's just going to lean on you and love on you and lick you.
Right.
But like I said, the families, it's been a great career for both of them. Thank God neither one of them has been injured in the line of duty, but they've seen it, and they've been there for, just like people were for us when Kayla passed. They're there for their peers. I ran a service department for a company in Greensboro for many years, and I've learned a lot from this conference. Some of it I did during my career, which is talk to people. If you see them having a bad day, talk to them. And especially firefighters, police officers, you don't know what their day is going to be like. It could go south in a hurry. Just be there and talk to them and love on them. Like I say, tell them you love them.
But we lost Kayla way too young. She was a very bright spot in our family, and we loved her dearly. But I don't think we could have made it without all these people helping us. And even today, it's been 7 years, and we still shed tears over her. But we just have such a support still with all of these people that responded to us. And it's just amazing. And I don't think we could make it without them.
It's perfect. Thank you both for explaining it so well. And the last two things I have for you, Ryan. First, there was something that this was probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. My wife and I were having a conversation, and funny enough, we were talking about the impact of family and stuff. And she goes, it'd be interesting to know if people, what they would want their family or friends to know. So we started talking about this, and I said, I could do it and have people submit it anonymously, and I could put it out there. And I called it, If I Could Tell You One Thing. So for yourself, for your parents or family members, your brother, whoever, friends, if you could tell them one thing about what you've done in public safety, whether it be in dispatch, volunteer fire, if there was something that you would want them to know. Just for example, I remember someone had posted one or sent it in to me. It said something to the effect of, if I could tell my family one thing, or if I could tell them one thing, it would be to let them know that every time I was in dispatch, I missed them, or I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be there for your birthday or for your first baseball game. I just would want you to know that I loved you and missed you and thought of you every single time. So there was all of these different messages. But if you could say that, if I could tell you one thing, it would be what?
I would think, I think for me personally, and my way of coping with things, and I think most time because they do have such a good understanding for public safety, is like some days I just need to be by myself, and that can make some people worry more sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
My thing is I like going to play golf with just me and Chase. And I know there's been times that, they've called and they're like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to play golf. Well, who are you playing with? Nobody. And that's sometimes you just gotta, especially now with traveling so much and I'm now working in mental health. I don't only have my own personal traumas, but I absorb other people's traumas by trying to help them through it. And so sometimes, sometimes you just need that day and that time just alone and isolated. And I know sometimes that makes people worry, but we all have kind of our own different, coping mechanisms. And, that's mine. No music, sometimes no phone, just the birds chirping and walking the golf course. So
Perfect. So the last thing I want to ask, and I'm sure you have this memorized, but as we've talked about the impact of family, Kayla's story, and everything that you do, there's a quote that is up on the wall at the Denise Amberley Foundation.
Mhm.
And I think it's perfect for the work that you do, that Nathan does, that a lot of folks do, but especially here as we're talking about you and Kayla and your family and the impact of family. What is that quote?
Go save the world.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, for sharing this story. And I know it's going to impact a lot of folks listening who maybe sometimes they feel like they're alone in some of this. Because sometimes we can be together, but alone at the same time. And I think this story, all of it, the impact on family it's gonna mean a lot. So thank you guys very much for sitting here with me and sharing this with everyone who is listening right now. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for those who are listening, if you have any comments or questions, or you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that'll be wttpodcast@gmail.com. The easiest way to do all of this is to simply go to links, and that is links.co/WTT podcast. You'll find everything there. My email, social media, where to hear the latest episode, all of the information, you will find it right there. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, Leader Next Gen Core Services, and you can see a video version of this. It's just going to be audio. There'll be a picture up, but you'll be able to see that on Facebook, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn and X. And then you can listen to the podcast and this episode 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one.